What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Stats to Assets podcast. Today, I am here with an awesome friend, awesome entrepreneur, awesome thinker in mind. I have waited and dreamed for this podcast, for real. He has changed my life, changed a lot of people's lives with the work that he does in his practice. And I am so excited to invite and have here Garrett Salpeter. Garrett, welcome to the show, finally.
Ernie, thank you. It's wonderful to have a chance to catch up with you. I know we've been friends for a long time, and it's fun to see your podcast and the amazing content and educational content that you're doing here. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's been how long? Like 2000.
10 years now, right?
A good 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about your journey. I've always wanted to have the conversation because I've watched you as an entrepreneur and just great human being, build your business, do a lot of free work and just all the many parts of your business and you having the change. I'm so interested in your journey, right? But if people don't know about NewFit or the Newbie, which they should, can you tell them a little bit about what you do and what is the Newbie?
Absolutely. So the name of our business is NewFit, and it's NEU, like neurological, because we're putting the nervous system first. I believe that if you work on the fitness or health or vitality of the nervous system, that actually helps a lot with challenges related to pain, injury, fitness, performance, recovery, and overall health. Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting breakthroughs there, for example, is a lot of times when athletes are injured, there's a sprained ankle, for example. There's often this focus on, the tissues, more on like the hardware, the bones, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, et cetera. And yes, they have to heal, but oftentimes the reason they take so long to heal is because of the neurological response to injury, because in response to injury or trauma, our nervous systems shut down some muscles and really over-tighten, like really guard and brace and tighten up others. Mm-hmm. And that's done with an eye towards protecting the body, reducing movement, right? Keeping you stuck in sort of a natural brace. And that's productive if that tissue is going to be attacked again in the next moment, but it's actually counterproductive for healing. And so one of the big breakthroughs that we have is prioritizing, looking first at this neurological response to injury, looking at how the nervous system shuts down muscles and actually going through this mapping process to find where that's happening and change patterns neurologically. And so the headline of that is that taking this nervous system approach, even to more structural or orthopedic issues, speeds up the healing process because it gets rid of the impediments, like that nervous system tension, shutting down muscles. That actually slows down the healing process, ends up being counterproductive. And so working on that helps people recover faster from pain, from injury. Mm-hmm. Then we work a lot with other populations like neuropathy patients, MS or stroke or spinal cord injury patients and stuff like that. So that's sort of NewFit, and we're probably best known for the Newbie device here in the middle. And people see a machine like this and they think, oh, is that a TENS unit or something like that? And it's a little similar in the sense that there's electrodes on the skin sending electrical impulses, mm-hmm. but it's a lot different because it's direct current instead of alternating current. And so I really believe it's like going from if a TENS unit is the equivalent of a horse-drawn carriage, this is the equivalent of a modern-day Tesla or BMW or something like that, where yes, they're both modes of transportation, but you can do so much more with one than you can with the other. And so with direct current, you can get these amazing effects on the nervous system to find where the nervous system has these protective compensatory patterns and then change them very quickly. And you can also influence the tissue mm-hmm. healing process as well. So mm-hmm. that's sort of the overview.
Okay. And you have your book here. What all do you talk about and kind of educate people on in the book?
So the book is meant to be educational. It starts out by looking at some of the most powerful principles of neuroscience, like, for example, how our brains are oriented more towards survival and protection. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, that leads our brains actually to limit us. So instead of getting us to do more, like if we're looking at it through the lens of athletic performance, instead of our brains getting us to jump higher, run faster, throw a ball harder, our brains actually want us to do less. They don't want us to move too fast or contract too much muscle or stretch too far for fear of getting injured. Mm-hmm. Because if we get injured, then we're less able to run away from a predator and we're more likely to get eaten, right? At least in the evolutionary ways that our brains have evolved and from generations ago. And so a lot of times what we need to do when we're working with the nervous system is teach the brain and nervous system that it's safe, that it's okay to perform at higher levels, or that it's safe to bring these muscles back online again after an injury. So starting with these principles, then we talk about in the book how to weave those principles through the entire continuum of care. So there's a chapter, for example, on recovery from injury, and then recovery from surgery, and then chronic pain, and then neurological injuries or neurodegenerative diseases, and then general fitness and elite athletic performance. So it kind of goes along that whole continuum, weaving in those principles of neuroscience throughout.
Okay, awesome. Now let's go back, and I want people to kind of understand your background and how you got into understanding about electricity and how the body can use it. What got you into this world?
There's a few different pieces of the story there, and one of them is my educational background. I feel very blessed and fortunate to have found a way to take these topics that I was passionate about and find a way to pursue them professionally. So I was a physics major in college. I ended up going to graduate school here in Austin at UT for engineering. Mm-hmm. And then as I got more and more into this, I went back to UT for additional graduate work in neuroscience. So it's sort of that, Venn diagram where engineering and neuroscience overlap. And then I also had been an ice hockey player, and I'd been an athlete myself, eventually played in college. And so that's sort of the context and background and things that I'm interested in, passionate about. Through hockey, I got really into training and physiology and learning more about the human body. And I ended up, when I was towards the end of my time in college, having an injury where I had some torn ligaments in my wrist. I was supposed to have a surgery, and I met a chiropractic neurologist who was, working with athletes like me, and helped me really changed my life, helped me avoid a surgery, helped my ligaments heal, on their own and get back out on the ice. And he did that through two main approaches. The first was looking at functional neurology, which is, like we were talking about earlier, which is looking at how the nervous system is responding to injury and how it's locally engaging the muscles that support that injured area or don't. And then also looking globally at the autonomic nervous system, right? Like everyone knows about the fight or flight response or the rest and digest. There's two different sides of the nervous system. So looking at locally and globally how the nervous system influences healing, and how it's more than just, the tissues healing, but there's this neurological component to it. And then the other part of his approach was using older versions of direct current. So he had this device that was an analog device with different dials on it and stuff like that. Yeah. And he used that on me, and I saw firsthand how that helped me heal. And so going through this experience, I was, relieved as an athlete and happy to be able to get out there on the ice sooner. But as a pre-engineering student, and with that passion for physiology and the human body, to go through that experience, it was just like this amazing eureka moment to be able to see something that finally made sense scientifically from first principles, and was just so different from the experiences I had with traditional physical therapy, traditional orthopedic medicine. And going through that experience, I just felt called. I had no idea what it would look like at the time, but I felt called to share that type of work with more and more people, and give more people the opportunity to have that type of experience that I had.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'm so glad you did, because I met you kind of at the beginning of your journey with your business from Edwina Brown.
That's right.
And
shout out Edwina.
Yeah, I had all kind of injuries. I was just busted and beat down. But
That's back when you were playing in Sweden, right?
I was playing. Yeah. I was getting ready to go to Sweden. I think I had got cut in Puerto Rico, and I got cut in Puerto Rico, and then I had calf issues, old ankle issues, and knee problems. And I couldn't squat deep, or couldn't squat without pain and lunge. And what I remember being told as I'm going through weightlifting in college is like, just don't do those, right? Or don't go as deep. But it's like I have to be trained as an athlete to be my best. And so that always irritated me. But when I was working with you, I remember the first time, it was like I did like 5 minutes of work on the machine. And we did some assisted squats. You had this like pole, and I held on to it, and I squatted, and we did 5 minutes. I believe you also did the hot spot, and that was awesome. And we found certain spots that were my worst imbalances, and I squatted. I left that day feeling great. Probably like the rest of the week, I was like, am I imagining things? I don't have that same pain that I did in my knees, right? And I'm like, let me go back. Let me keep going back and to see if I keep getting the same result. And I did. And I remember just working with you for that summer before going to Sweden. And it was excruciating. It wasn't pain, y'all, but it was like, if it was taxing and challenging, because I'd never had therapy actually be a workout. Therapy was like, typical therapy sometimes for me was just doing squats and different things, but it was pain, but it wasn't like moving me forward. I didn't feel stronger. Now, when I worked with you, I felt like these pains were actually going away. And I had a new body. It's almost like I can get a new body every time I went to work out. But I went forward and had like the best season ever. This is like year 3 going into year 4 in Sweden. I was really lean, didn't have an injury, was really athletic. And I was like, yeah, there's something to this. And so, from there I kept training with you, learning more about it, and was just super blessed to find you. And I think I was actually on my like last try of something when Edwina was like, go see Garrett. And I was like, okay, this might be it. And I think a lot of people are in their pain journey when they find you sometimes. It's like they don't have that, they've been trying all kind of things and it's not working. And they try you. And have you had this experience where people are kind of like, yeah, whatever, it might work. I'm just here to try it first, and then when they try it, they're like, okay, this is like real. I'm getting results.
Yeah.
Because that's how I was. I was like, I might as well go. It might be that one thing, and it was for me.
Yeah, for sure. We've had a lot of stories like that, and I think ultimately the reason is that there's very few other frameworks, paradigms, approaches, techniques that are really going upstream to the root cause, which is in line with what we talked about earlier, is related to nervous system function, how the nervous system responds to injury. And in your case, it's, you're chronically irritating your knees, and so you continue to shut down those muscles, and we're able to find ways to get them to turn back on again so they can work. It's like they're supposed to be, I think I like the metaphor of the shock absorbers of your car. And now they're working again, so all of a sudden they protect the body of the chassis of the car, so to speak. And yeah, there's been a lot of athletes that have been in a similar thing. I'm ready to retire, and there's a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, Huddy, his first name Daniel Hudson, who talks about how the newbie gave him a few more years on his career when he was ready to retire. And then there's also, like in the introduction to my book, I talk about the story of Amy, who you had met in the clinic over the years, and she had been paralyzed from an accident where she fell off a horse in her early 20s and came to see us 25 years later, when no one had any real expectation that she could actually improve function. They say in the first year or two is sort of your window to regain function. After that, you're pretty much just stuck with what you got. And she was able to start regaining some sensation, start regaining a little bit of movement, going through progressions of crawling and eventually walking again with a walker. And it's a really inspiring and wonderful story, but there's even some dramatic examples like that where, hers was over the course of, a couple of years, but being consistent and putting in the work. But there are stories like that where finally being able to go upstream to work with the nervous system or have a signal that's powerful enough to influence the nervous system to change and adapt and actually create this opportunity or tap into the power of neuroplasticity can lead to breakthroughs, in cases like yours where, it's just been frustrating, feel like you've been stalled, haven't been able to make progress, feel like it's always going to be this way. There's a lot of cases like that where it's been able to help.
Yeah, I always tell people, after starting to train with you and fix some of my issues, I was able to play at least another 3 to 4 years. So that made my whole career 8 years. So about that 4-year gap, I was like, I might have to hang it up. And I didn't want to, but I found a way to continue playing. talk about some of your, I think, hardest successes in like hardest times building your business in the beginning as a founder, right, of a new concept that it's hard for people to understand unless they try it. Like, how was that?
So there's sort of two chapters. The first is when I was really focused on, starting and running my clinic, which of course is when we met, and I was in there working with people all day long for many years as a one-man shop.
The basement?
That's right, down
the
in the
dungeon.
dungeon. Yeah.
He had there's no windows, y'all. No windows.
So they couldn't hear you scream when we turned the machine up on you, right?
I was done.
Yeah. So in that phase, I was just starting, as a for many years, a one-man shop doing everything. And so it was, hustling to get people in the door and go to networking groups and go and do demos where I could and try to meet people and ask for referrals. And then eventually that picked up. And then, for about 7 or 8 years, because of my engineering and the neuroscience lens, I kept seeing ways that I wanted to improve whatever technology was out there. So I was, for a while, I was just waiting for someone to come out with more modern versions of the technology I had been using, and finally got to the point where I said, you know what, I just got to do it myself.
Right.
And so transitioning there was a big deal. And one of the biggest challenges that had also turned into one of the biggest successes was having to change my identity, because I derived so much satisfaction and my sense of self-worth from being in there, creating those results, having experiences like you described, where I'm working with someone and helping them have these breakthroughs and feel better than they felt in years and feel like they finally have hope to be able to resume playing basketball or be able to think that they might be able to do the activities that they love to do, but felt like they couldn't. It was being taken away from them, So getting myself out of that and really transitioning my identity to more of the CEO of a medical device company was a big deal. So to reinvent myself or to actually change there was scary. Sort of like, it's sort of like the metaphor of the caterpillar going to the chrysalis and becoming a butterfly. I don't know if I'm quite a butterfly, but it's that reinventing oneself, of really having to take on a new identity. And then also that carries through, as a business leader now. So for many of your listeners who lead teams, are entrepreneurs, you probably having similar experiences of understanding that at some point too, it's not as much about like me getting my work done as an individual contributor as much as it is me transitioning to becoming more of a leader and supporting the people on our team, because 20 or 30 people can get so much more done than this one person, any one person. And that's been another piece of the evolution there. But I there's so many interesting, in terms of like challenges that come up.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I really think that running a business is a spiritual practice, or is an opportunity for spiritual growth, because when I look at the biggest challenges that have come up along the way, one of them is about that identity, which speaks to me having to really understand what are my values are, what are my priorities, really having to get clear on the direction I wish to go in my life. I mean, I think that's what among the most profound questions and forms of self-examination that one can have. And then also, for me, a lot of the challenges that have come up have been interpersonal, relationship type things, and seeing what patterns come up. So, if I'm being totally honest, I've had a pattern of, like difficulty setting boundaries, more of a people pleasing type of tendency, which is probably something that I learned in childhood. I had to behave in a certain way to feel loved or to feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that my parents did anything bad or is anything like overly traumatic. Everyone has something, right? There's no way that every child can get every single need met. So, but we all have, some sort of something like that, some sort of pattern. And so seeing how that comes up and how that made it difficult for me to have difficult conversations, have uncomfortable conversations, to give feedback. I let one early employee stick around for years longer than I should have, because of my own difficulty setting boundaries, and because of that sort of like you talk about the difference between abundance and scarcity mindset. My like, oh my gosh, if he leaves, will anyone ever want to come and work with me again? Right. And so some of it is just learning and understanding like, hey, what we're doing here is awesome. Hey, we've been able to get these other awesome people. So if someone's going to ruin that, it's like, not only do I, even if I wouldn't do it just for myself, now it's like, wow, I have this dozen people over here who are awesome and who are doing such amazing work and helping us move this business forward. And so if this one other person is like ruining that dynamic, even if I wouldn't do it for myself, at least I damn sure have to get rid of that person for these people. Yeah. So it sort of is that sort of accountability, but it's all part of this amazing journey of really, I would say, spiritual growth even.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, there's so many moments for you probably, but do you have like a favorite moment in your business, whether it was positive, right? It's a win, or something happened to where it really changed you and changed how you thought that changed the business. Any just profound like moments?
Besides being on this podcast with you right now?
Yes.
So there's a lot of interesting ones. I mean, big, breakthroughs. For me, some of the most exciting moments were these moments along the way when I was able to connect the dots between what I was learning in my neuroscience curriculum and what I was seeing in the clinic day to day. Like some of those really exciting epiphanies that helped me understand, hey, I think there is something here. I think I have, a different way to approach this, a different way to frame this up, a different way to actually treat people, and a different way to create and leverage technology and things like that. So some of those sort of intellectual understandings, and then there's understanding something intellectually, and then there's like embodying it or doing it or seeing it in practice. Some of those along the way are really exciting. And then, I mentioned that I was just running this clinic and eventually finally decided, hey, you know what, I'm going to come out with this machine. Like I don't think anyone else is doing it. I'm just going to have to do it myself. So there was one cool thing where I had a client who was a patent attorney, and he had been a client who, was supposed to withdraw from a marathon because of knee pain. And I did 2 sessions with him in, Monday and Wednesday, and he went out and ran that marathon on Saturday, and he came back in the next week and was like, hey, this is cool. Tell me more about, just what you're doing here. And so I told him my understanding, which was, rudimentary at the time, but of sort of what was out there, intellectual property or patent wise.
Yeah.
And the ideas that I had that I thought were worth pursuing. And that was one moment where he was like, you could probably patent that and probably get a patent on that. And
wow,
that was sort of a, Yeah. It was one of those moments where I was like, it was probably the biggest single influence that finally got me to that point of saying, okay, I am going to pursue this. I am going to create a device and really pivot in my career and life.
Really cool. Really cool. I'm curious now that you have a big team. You talked about changing your identity from being able to work really closely with clients, and now you have to kind of go into more of a leadership role. How do you kind of stay close to the new technologies or new protocols that you guys are doing in the clinic or when you're working with people? Because you when you're working with someone on the machine, you're closer to it. So you kind of can keep your skills sharp. How do you keep your skills sharp without working with so many clients?
I have 2 ways to answer that. One way or part of my answer is that I don't as much anymore because that is kind of necessary to be the CEO of a company.
Yeah.
One has to be kind of up at that more 20 or 30,000 foot level and not as much down in the weeds and details. And I have to be able to delegate and trust. So, we have several wonderful clinicians on our team who are coming up with new protocols and educating people. And so in some ways they might be better at certain things treatment wise than I am, even if I had done my 10,000 hours or more, like, 20 or 30 and was really one of the most experienced people in the world in this type of thing. I in some ways I'm out of practice, but there's also, part of the answer is that I still do keep my skills sharp just because I love it. And so I use the newbie on myself, at least a couple times a week. And I still go to some conferences where I actually get to work with people and do 5 or 10 minute demos and see someone with plantar fasciitis, followed by someone with knee pain, followed by someone with chronic back pain, followed by someone who just had a shoulder surgery. You see all sorts of people there. So I get a lot of reps in doing that. And I still talk a lot with our clinical people. One of my, I think, one of the interesting parts of business is sort of defining the key priorities of everyone in every role. And so for me, part of it is like what we call quote unquote face of the company is being the one who gives talks at conferences or we'll go on to your podcast and do stuff like this and hosting our own podcast, so it's that sort of outside facing promotional activities. And then one of them also is innovation. So I'm working with our clinicians to work on, like, we came out with the electric glove and some of these protocols. And so that is still part of my role, is to do that. So I keep in touch with some of it, but I'm also a little bit out of practice as well. And if someone's calling to ask about, like, hey, how would I approach this type of patient? Oftentimes the best answer for me is to say, let me connect you with our director of neuro or our director of sports medicine, because, she's the one who's supporting 50 other people in your position and is just better suited to have that conversation with you.
Okay, cool. Why should someone look into using the newbie in their practice? If, let's say they're into, health and wellness, any type of holistic practice, why should they not overlook this conversation and actually see if the newbie is right for them?
I think it comes back to what you said earlier, where a lot of times you were doing rehab and, you didn't say it exactly like this, but just sort of going through the motions, not getting as much result. And then to have the experience like you described, where one session, it was just this, like, almost miraculous experience of, like, wow, my knees don't hurt for the first time in years. Being able to give patients and clients that experience on a regular basis is just incredibly fulfilling as a practitioner, and also can be like rocket fuel for your business. Because if you have people coming in and having breakthroughs like that every single day, guess how much more likely they are to invest if they need to pay out of pocket to continue your services, right? To retain them. They're going to want to do more with you after they have an experience like that. And think about how much more likely they're going to be to tell their friends and family and coworkers and shout it from the rooftops and become evangelists for your business. So I think it's a real differentiator in that way. And we've seen both, clinical trials with data that shows beneficial effects on all sorts of conditions and things like that. But we've also seen data on how much it's helped clinics with retention, with arrival rates, with adding new lines of cash services in some cases. And so there's it's both. I really love the saying that we want to do well by doing good. We're doing good work, helping our patients, and it's helping drive the business forward and helping the business grow and differentiate itself, within the community, within whatever geographic area that you're in.
I want you to talk about more of the spread of NewFit, right? So I was looking on your website and I'm looking at the numbers of like professional sports teams that the newbie is in, universities that the newbie is in, and certified practitioners you have, almost more than 3,000 now. And then you also have a team in Australia.
That's right. Yeah, there's a distributor in Australia and in the UK. We're going international.
Tell us about it. I'm excited. Yeah.
It's been amazing to see people being able to reach other people, other patients and clients that we would never work with directly, and work with other types of conditions that we had never experienced and things like that. It's been just so energizing and humbling and fulfilling to see that. And like you said, there's between 3,000 and 4,000 as of the time we're having this conversation, practitioners certified. So that's a mix of some physical therapists, chiropractors, athletic trainers, many in private practices, a good number with professional sports teams. And then, there's a few hundred practices, 400 or 500 practices. And, some practices have 3 to 5 physical therapists. Sports teams will have 3 to 5 athletic trainers. So, there's more practitioners because there can be multiple practitioners within one location. But it's been so cool. We've done a lot of work, and I'm allowed to talk about publicly, working with the LA Dodgers, for example.
Yeah.
They have 7 devices.
Wow.
So I've been able to go out there to Dodger Stadium and go in their athletic training room and work with players, and it's been amazing. But to see them, they're using it now. They have a few with the big league team. They have 2 units at spring training, and then they have one with each of their minor league teams. So to see that integration there, a lot of Major League Baseball, a lot of NFL teams, NHL, NBA, MLS, it's been amazing. I grew up in Chicago, so I've gotten to go to spring training with the Chicago Cubs to train their staff. Got to go behind the scenes in the Blackhawks facility to see, to work with their staff. I got to go into the clubhouse at Fenway Park. I mean, just some of these things are just bucket list, amazing items, right? Amazing experiences. It's been really cool to see that. But I really like thinking about this journey as, imagine we're trying to climb up a tall mountain, and it's sort of like I don't know if it's a quarter of the way or halfway up, and we're at this point where we can look back down and say, wow, look at how far we've come. That's amazing. Look at this beautiful view. We can take that in. And then in the same moment, we can turn around and say, and look how far we have to go. Because I really believe there's many, many more practitioners and 20 to 40 times more, that many number of patients that they can serve that can still benefit from this work. So
absolutely,
it's great to see the momentum, and also, like a sense of responsibility to be able to continue to foster the growth of this so that it can help more people.
So I know you started dancing. We gotta bring it.
Segue.
We gotta talk about
it. Oh,
right.
geez, I gotta go. No, I'm just kidding.
We gotta talk about it. You've been dancing. How's dancing?
That's right. I just recently started doing some bachata lessons.
Yeah.
And it's been so fun. I love that. I think it's really good to have something where, whether intellectually or physically or both, where we're pushing ourselves to do something uncomfortable, to learn something new. Very important for the brain. I don't know if anyone listening to this has heard of Andrew Huberman's podcast, but he talks a lot about this AMCC, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is a part of the brain that is associated with more activity there is associated with so-called super agers, people who are still, hiking and vibrant and healthy and energetic, into their 90s and early hundreds. And there's a strong association with activity in this area, and the way that one stimulates this area of the brain is to do just that, to work on something that's challenging, that's new, that forces you to be a little bit uncomfortable, have a little bit of that friction to work through. And so for me, learning something new is kind of exciting because it's that, and also I've been an athlete. I like the kinesthetic experience of it. I like the rhythm. I like the learning. It's a great way to be active, and so I've started doing lessons. So I'm still, what am I, a yellow belt? I'm not on the other side of the room where you are yet.
You're in the belt system though. You're on the way. Shout out to Austin Inspired Movement. Shout out to you, Fabian.
Yes, great lessons. I highly recommend it. It's been fun. I've done, I don't know, call it 6 or 7 lessons so far, and certainly intend to continue because it's been a blast.
I'm glad to see you there. It's awesome. How do you think dancers, let's say the ones that are teaching locally weekly, and then the ones that travel the world and they're in huge festivals, and these artists are dancing all night long and all day teaching. How important would it be for them to have something like the newbie with them?
Oh, and incredibly. There is a little, if anyone has seen the Beyonce documentary, there's actually a clip of her. You can see electrodes on her leg when she's rehabbing her knee surgery.
The newbie?
She's using the newbie, yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Yes. Come on. Oh yeah, Tyson too.
Mike
Tyson.
Oh yeah. It's been really
years with him, right?
It's been really cool to see the different people that we've gotten to connect with.
That's
Saquon
crazy.
Barkley, I got to go work with him at his house. So it's been so cool. But
super proud of you. Every time I see electrodes, I'm like, it better be the newbie. I know it's the newbie.
Yeah. So there was a physical therapist who brought this on tour with her. Is the reason I bring that up. Plus, I think it's just so cool. And my kids, when they saw that, they were like, "Oh my God, Beyonce!"
Yeah.
One of the issues when you have that much volume, when you're teaching, when you're performing every night, when you're doing it day in and day out, one of the issues is that if you have any sort of little tweak the way that that can compound is like if your car tire alignment is a little bit off and then you drive on it, it's going to put more pressure on the axle and eventually it leads to a break somewhere. So the same sort of thing. So if you can, if you're dancing and you feel a little tweak here and there and then you're going to start compensating around it and it's going to change your movements. It's going to lead to other stresses and forces going somewhere else and lead to other aches and pains. And eventually it can compound and lead to more serious injury.
Yeah.
So being able to head off anything more serious right when it happens, being able to scan around and find anything that's a little bit tight, a little bit shut down, a little bit weak, a little bit inhibited. That's amazing to be able to scan around and find those, because those are areas that when they show up on the scan, in that kind of artificial testing environment, what that tells us is that when you go out to dance or you go out to even walk or use your body, your brain is actually trying to avoid loading those areas. It's compensating around them. And so being able to address those as they come up is amazing. So one of my favorite things to do is to do what I call the electric foam roller, where I take, let me see, you got one of these? I take one of the pads and I actually just scan around on my body. And I find, like you talked about when we found hot spots with you and we're doing treatments for your knee during your basketball career, scanning around, find any spot that just, it feels like a little bit of a trigger point, but I'll find it and I'll just do a few movements when it's on there and then go on and find the next one. So doing a little bit of that can be, can just be amazing for recovery, maintenance, kind of body hygiene or maintenance. It's a really, really powerful, and a big part of it is because it helps you, head off those small issues before they become bigger ones.
I remember, I always joke, but it was true. Like whenever you first did my hot spot, it could have been like pin the tail on the donkey. Like you would have threw it on me and it'd be like, that's a spot. Everything, the whole body was a hot spot at that point. Okay, let's wrap it up. Is there anything that is coming up in the business or anything that you want entrepreneurs to know to wrap up the podcast?
Oh my gosh. One thing that's top of mind, I just gave a talk on the neuroscience of leadership. And so I don't know if this is anything that you had in mind, but I mentioned part of my role is this, face of the company, more public facing, giving talks and stuff like that. So I'd given a talk to this group a few years in a row and talked about a lot of NewFit stuff. And they asked me if I would speak at a more leadership oriented one. And so it was really cool because, as we've talked about here, I love applying the principles of neuroscience into the daily practice of physical therapy and chiropractic and rehabilitation and sports performance. And this was so fun because it was applying the principles of neuroscience into an adjacent topic of leadership. And so looking at what happens in the brains of people in a workplace environment is fascinating. And so maybe this is a good note on which to end here, but there's a really wonderful study that Google did. It was called Project Aristotle. And so this is Google, or Alphabet, like the parent company, big, billions of dollars company. So they had a team of scientists, of PhD industrial psychologists. They looked at over 180 teams. They surveyed 50,000 people within their company. They looked at 100 different variables, trying to figure out what it was that led to the most effective, that made the teams most effective. They looked at things like, was it a mix of introverts and extroverts, or was it having people be friends outside of work, or was it the IQ of the team? Was it just smarter people? It was none of those things. The number one thing that stood out was actually psychological safety. It was the people on the team knowing that they could speak up to share ideas or concerns without the fear of being punished. And that sense of feeling safe and comfortable enough to really contribute, to really share their ideas and say what they have to say was literally was the number one factor. And so that's one of the things that's been top of mind for me recently is really focusing on ways to do that. So ways to promote trust and a sense of belonging. And there's a great book called The Culture Code that I would highly recommend to anyone who's interested in culture, establishing like a really supportive, effective culture within their team or organization.
Okay.
But that was just a fascinating thing to me to understand that was sort of the one thing that stood out. And that can, just what does that mean in the real world? Well, think about like in the operating room, for example. So if you have, there's this hierarchical structure where there's like a surgeon or a doctor who's sort of at the top, and then there's nurses or medical assistants. And in some environments, if there is an absence, if there's not psychological safety, the medical assistant might notice, hey, the doctor's about to operate on the wrong area of the body or give the wrong medication. But if they don't have this enough psychological safety, they won't speak up. And that could mean a life-threatening problem for that patient. Whereas if they do have the sense of psychological safety, in that case, it could literally save lives. So I mean, that's a little more dramatic example, but that same type of thing is is at play in other workplaces and other organizations. So I think it's fascinating to think through that lens of how to balance the need to give clear feedback, because you don't want to, doesn't mean you just pump everybody up even if they're doing a bad job, but you have to be able to have that kind of safety net there so that you can give constructive feedback when it's needed too.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's awesome. It's really key, because it seems like it would be simple, but it probably can get easily overlooked in teams and groups and organizations.
Yeah, for sure.
Really cool.
For sure.
Garrett, thank you.
Ernie.
We did it.
We did it. It's been a pleasure. I'm honored to be on the show, and so excited to see all the wonderful things you're doing in your career, and see you out on the dance floor in the studio too.
Yeah. We're gonna get you into Brazilian Zouk soon. That's my class. What I'm doing when you're with the bachata folks.
Let me get to my orange belt. Let me get up a couple more belts on the bachata side. Then I'll come over and join you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you guys. Stats to assets. Peace. I'll see you when I see you.